What animal is on the Canadian quarter?
Is it an elk?
A moose.
I think there's an elk on there.
It's a deer, right?
Is it a moose?
What is that?
Despite very popular opinion, since 1937 when Emmanuel Hahn did this sketch, the Canadian quarter has featured a representation of a caribou.
Oh!
Today, that same caribou is a species at risk. So, in 2012, the Government of Canada released guidelines to help get caribou off of the species at risk list. And the goal of those guidelines was to have self-sustaining populations in all woodland caribou ranges across Canada. In Alberta specifically, this means working towards a higher percentage of what we call undisturbed area within each caribou range. In other words, for caribou to thrive, they need large geographical areas of continuous forest with well-planned roads and activities. But caribou are not the only species that need this type of environment. For example, wolverines, fishers, many species of birds and plants all share the same habitat with caribou and are similarly affected by these disturbances. So, as it stands right now, in many areas of Alberta, conditions will not support self-sustaining caribou populations. And this comes down to the pressures that we put on the land. It will take working together to develop strategies for conservation, restoration, and development so that caribou populations can be healthy. So let's think about this. The same landscape that supports caribou is also valued by hunters and recreators, nature-based tourists, resource industries, and by indigenous peoples for exercising treaty rights and cultural traditions. Sharing this landscape, like many of our social, cultural, and economic values, involves maintaining and caring for the environment. If we think of this like a pyramid, the foundation is the environment. And in order for economic activity to function and for us to benefit from the products of that economy, we need to make sure that that foundation is well cared for, to ensure that it's able to support all of the pressures put on it by things we can control, in addition to the things that we can't. It all adds up. For example, the government of Alberta aims to balance environmental, economic, and social outcomes or goals in the province. One of the best ways it does this for caribou is by collaborating across sectors like forestry and oil and gas to determine ways of supporting the management of habitats to promote healthy future populations. This could mean helping to better strategize things like harvesting locations or implementing restoration plans, which is just what Jason Supernault of Eric Auger & Sons Contracting did on a pilot project with the Alberta government, working on something called seismic line restoration, which we'll get to in the next part of this series.
These lines have been in place for over 30 years without regenerating on their own. They create hunting corridors for wildlife.
And what were you guys trying to do to these lines?
To remove the predatory access, basically, by cutting off these lines and ensuring that you can't see down the lines as well as you used to before, ensuring that they regenerate on their own.
But not just animals.
And to remove the footprint of man, basically, one of the things that we found was the amount of human activity that was actually happening within these areas.
A starting point is changing the way we view these disturbances.
And you see, and one of the things that you see, like I've seen hundreds and thousands of kilometers over the years, but when you're actually on these lines, you see the impact of that occurs from just your regular ATV traffic, your human traffic that's going up and down these lines, and how they don't regenerate and they stay there forever. Basically, that's why they call them the legacy seismic lines, right?
If we shift our thinking to look at how each human footprint interacts with one another on the landscape, we can start to make careful choices that consider that bigger picture. It's about making decisions today that have positive outcomes for tomorrow to support our environment and everything that depends on it. Caribou are important because the health of their population is an indicator of what is going right or wrong. They're sensitive to disturbances and need a healthy ecosystem in order to thrive. So, if caribou are suffering, it's a sign that many other species are struggling as well. Land uses can vary from region to region, but the impact on the environment from the combined effects of land use activities over time results in something that we call cumulative effects, the subject of Part 2 of Footprint. This video is Part 1 of a 5-part series to help introduce, build awareness, and understanding for some land use and environmental management topics. We encourage you to learn more about how we can better manage our footprint by visiting the Government of Alberta website at www.alberta.ca.